At my book launch, my brother said he wanted to read something I wrote. I smiled. Then he pulled out my private diary and read it aloud. My sister laughed so hard she had to stand. My uncle asked if I'd be signing diary copies. I walked out and did something on my phone. A month later, they were begging me to undo it. I wish I could tell you I had a bad feeling when I walked in, that something felt off, that the air was too quiet, or my mom looked too cheerful, or the wine was already open. But no, it felt normal, which was worse. The house smelled like lemon and rosemary. Someone had lit candles. My book was displayed on the console table by the front door, at least 3 copies perfectly stacked. My sister must have arranged them like that. She always had a flair for presentation, even if it wasn't hers. I'd spent the entire day telling myself this was a good idea, that it was nice of them to want to celebrate me, that maybe for once it was real. I walked in with a bottle of wine and a stomach full of hope. Big mistake. "Look who made it!" my mom called from the kitchen. Her voice was too light. My sister was already swirling a glass of red like she was hosting a cooking segment. She kissed the air near my cheek. "You look professional," she said like that was a compliment. My brother was on the couch, half watching something on his phone, half looking bored. "I made a playlist," he said. "It's all stuff from the early 2000s. You know, when you were still scribbling in those notebooks of yours." He said it like a joke. I laughed a little. The kind of laugh you do when you're not sure if you're supposed to. Dinner was served. Toasts were made. My mom talked about how I always had a lot of thoughts as a kid. My sister said she never imagined I'd write a book that actually made it into a store. Everyone laughed like that was charming. I smiled through all of it because tonight was bigger than they knew. I hadn't told them yet, but I had already signed my second book deal. Bigger publisher, bigger advance, a story that was closer to the bone, and I was going to announce it tonight over dessert. Right after the cake, I even had a little thank you speech planned in my head. I wanted to give them something solid, something they'd be proud of. I'd convinced myself they would be proud. And then my brother picked up a book from the console table. "Hey," he said, flipping it open. "Mind if I read a little something out loud?" I smiled. Of course I smiled. He'd never shown interest in my writing before. "Sure," I said. "That'd be nice." Only it wasn't my book. I realized it 2 sentences in. The voice was wrong. The wording was raw, painfully honest. I froze. By the time he hit the line about the boy I used to write about, the boy I never told anyone I had a crush on, someone far too close to the family to admit out loud, my stomach had already dropped through the floor. He was reading from my old diary. My sister caught on before anyone else. Her hand flew to her mouth, not in shock, in anticipation. "Oh my God," she whispered, grinning. My mother let out a short, surprised laugh. My uncle leaned forward like he was watching something on stage. My brother kept going. He even gave the words a little dramatic flair like he was auditioning, and I just stood there frozen, exposed. "I think if I disappeared, no one would notice for at least 3 days," he read with exaggerated sadness. My sister nearly fell over laughing. My uncle asked if I'd be signing diary copies too. I hadn't moved. I couldn't. Something buzzed in my ears. My heart was pounding, but my hands were cold. My diary. The only place I'd ever told the truth, and now it was performance material. I walked over silent and took it from his hands. No yelling, no scene, just 2 hands closing around the cover and pulling it away. He looked confused, like I didn't get the joke. I clutched the diary to my chest and walked to the front door. Still not saying a word, I stepped outside. No one followed me. I sat on the steps. The air was cold and it felt good. I opened my phone. I didn't scroll. I didn't text. I just did something. Something quiet. something that would change everything. Behind me, I heard a burst of laughter from inside, glasses clinking, my name spoken like a punchline. I turned my head slightly and saw them through the window, my sister laughing so hard she had to hold the counter, my dad mouth wide, shaking his head in disbelief, my brother doing a fake swoon voice like he was still reading from the page. They didn't know. They had no idea. If they knew what I'd just done, they wouldn't be laughing. But they'll find out. You'd think it started with the diary. It didn't. That was just the encore. The truth is, I'd been the family punchline long before I could spell the word boundary. It started small. A raised eyebrow said. A smirk exchanged behind my back. I was the kid who cried too easily, asked too many questions, talked to myself in the mirror, and made up stories before I could write them down. I filled notebooks, doodles on math homework, dialogue scribbled in the margins of church bulletins. Always in her own little world, my mom used to say, laughing. But the world I lived in didn't come with laughter. Not the kind that felt good anyway. It came with corrections, with sarcasm dressed up as concern, with a dad who'd glance up from the TV just long enough to say that again, with a sister who told people at school that I was kind of weird but sweet, with a brother who once mimicked me reading aloud until I locked myself in the bathroom and stayed there through dinner. They never hit me, never screamed. That would have been easier to name. Instead, they made me invisible or worse. Visible only when I was ridiculous. I remember once when I was 13, I told them I wanted to be a writer. Not in a vague, dreamy way. I'd made a list. I had a plan. I'd researched authors who got published before they were 20. My dad laughed from behind his newspaper. "Let's start with passing science class," he said. Everyone else laughed too. Because it was funny. Because I was funny. Because, of course I was. At dinner parties, I was the quirky one. The creative one said with just enough edge to mean not serious. My sister would pat my head like I was a golden retriever and say, "She's going to write a novel about us one day." Everyone would laugh, and I'd laugh too, because I didn't know what else to do with the heat in my face. I tried to stop writing once in high school. I got rid of the notebooks, threw away the half-finished stories. I lasted 4 days. Then I bought a new journal and wrote until my wrist cramped. I wrote things I never said out loud. About how scared I was to grow up and still not be enough. About how my sister got praised for getting B's in business classes while I got silenced for an A in English. About how my brother once forgot my birthday and no one noticed. That diary was the only place I told the truth. And now they'd passed it around like it was party entertainment. The humiliation at that dinner wasn't new. It was just louder. They were always laughing. I just hadn't heard it all at once before. The funny thing is, I didn't even want to move back home after college, but I did. For a while, I'd gotten a freelance gig writing articles. Nothing fancy, just tech pieces and think pieces, whatever would pay. I told them it was temporary, that I was figuring things out. My mom told people I was between jobs. My dad once introduced me to a neighbor as our little writer, and then added, "She writes about, feelings or whatever." I moved out the next month. It's not that I never stood up for myself. I did sometimes. Once when I was 22, I told my mom I didn't like the way my sister talked down to me. She blinked like she didn't understand. "She's just joking," she said. "She loves you." I learned then that in this family, love means never being allowed to say you're hurt. If you bring up the way someone made you feel, you're the problem. You're too sensitive. You're making drama. You're rewriting history. So I stopped correcting them, stopped asking them to see me, stopped expecting anything but the bare minimum, and started building a life outside of them. But even as I built something real, my own apartment, my own career, a finished manuscript, some small shameful part of me still wanted them to be proud. So when my agent called and told me the book sold, I cried. Not just because I'd done it, but because I thought maybe now they'll finally see me. I planned the celebration myself. I picked the venue, my parents' house, because I thought it would feel personal. I chose the food, the drinks, even the playlist. I designed the invitations. I bought the wine. I brought the books. And I walked into that house hoping they would finally see the girl who used to write in the margins and believe in her. But instead, they saw something funnier, something weaker. They saw a diary. I don't remember walking back to my car that night. I just remember sitting in the cold with my hands still trembling and my phone screen glowing like it knew something I didn't. Something cracked open in me. Something final. It wasn't rage. Not exactly. It was older than rage. Quieter. Like the feeling you get when you finally stop knocking on a locked door. They always laughed when I told the truth. So this time I didn't tell them anything. I just made a choice and I kept my mouth shut because the truth, some things don't need to be said out loud. Some things are louder when you don't say them at all. They didn't notice right away. That was the most satisfying part. 4 days after the party, they went on like nothing had happened. My sister posted a group photo with a caption that read, "Proud of our little author." My mom sent me a blurry picture of a slice of cake with "Congrats" written in red icing as if she wanted credit for the memory. Even my brother texted me once, "Hey, let me know when you start that second book." I have ideas. I stared at that message for a long time. He still thought I'd let him be part of it. He still thought this was salvageable. But something had already shifted quietly, completely. Here's what they didn't know. That night, sitting on the porch with my diary clutched to my chest and my hands still trembling, I'd pulled out my phone and cut the ropes. Every single one. The mortgage gone. They wouldn't notice until the first payment bounced, until the letter arrived. Polite but final. This account is no longer active. Please contact your provider for further assistance. The tuition support for my brother. His scholarship only covered part of it. The rest, me. Quietly. Monthly. He'd be notified soon. Midterm access locked. Balance due. My sister's emergency fund for child care, groceries, and whatever else she claimed to need. Disabled. The standing order had been feeding her account like clockwork. She never said thank you. Probably thought it was my moral obligation. All of it gone. I also revoked my co-signer status from every account I could legally touch. The utilities, the family loan, the joint account I didn't ask to be added to in the first place. And I didn't just cancel payments. I sent one more thing that night. I emailed my lawyer. Subject line, "Cease all informal family obligations, effective immediately." It's funny how quickly people change when the money stops. My mom was the first to call. First, it was subtle. "Hey honey, just wondering if there's been a delay on the usual transfer. No big deal, just checking." I didn't answer. Then came the second message. "We're short this month because your father had to cover the car repairs. Can you please just let me know when it's coming in?" Then the third. "I don't understand what's happening." You know we're under a lot of pressure right now. So I didn't reply. A week later, my brother called. "I got locked out of my student account. Did you forget to... Wait, did you cancel it?" I didn't even bother to respond. Let them wonder. They had always depended on me quietly, steadily, as if it were gravity. They started small years ago. A one-time payment to help with groceries. A little extra during the pandemic. A cosign here, a cover there. But soon I was their safety net. The one they never saw because they assumed I'd always be there. Reliable, invisible, disposable. They lived like I didn't have bills. Like success meant I owed them. They never said thank you. Not once, just, "Can you help us out again?" You know your sister's struggling. We're not asking for much. They always made it sound like a favor I was doing for myself, like helping them meant I was part of the family. But the second I needed dignity, silence, or worse, laughter. It took 2 weeks for the panic to set in. I got a voicemail from my dad. Calm, controlled. "We need to talk. This isn't sustainable. We've always worked as a unit, and I think you've forgotten that." A unit. Funny how the only time they called us a unit was when the money was missing. The escalation came fast after that. My sister showed up at my apartment. I didn't let her in. She stood outside the door for 20 minutes yelling through it like we were on a bad reality show. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to just disappear after everything we've done for you." I almost laughed. Everything they'd done. I stayed quiet. She eventually left, but not before slipping a handwritten note under my door. "You're being selfish. You're letting the family fall apart." Then came the emails. My publisher forwarded the first one to me, an anonymous message, though I could tell it was my uncle, suggesting that I was mentally unstable and had a history of inappropriate obsessions. They didn't mention the diary, but they didn't need to. I knew exactly what they were doing, trying to poison the well, trying to ruin the one thing I'd built on my own. My publisher asked if I wanted to involve legal. I said yes. I called my lawyer again. This time the subject line was different. Defamation, harassment, action. We filed official cease and desist notices. My sister received one for showing up at my home and refusing to leave. My uncle received one for emailing my professional contacts, and the whole family got a joint notice stating that any further interference in my career, finances, or personal life would be met with swift legal action. Suddenly, the messages stopped. The house went quiet. I should have felt triumphant, but what I really felt was free, like I could finally hear my own thoughts again. Like I'd stopped auditioning for a role I never wanted in the first place. The family's quiet supporter, the fixer, the one who always helps out. No one had ever asked what it cost me. No one had ever asked what I needed until I stopped showing up, and then they came running, but it was too late. I passed a bookstore last week and saw my book in the window, front and center. Bestseller sticker on the cover. I stood there for a long time, not taking a picture, not texting anyone, just breathing. No one had their hands in this moment. No one could laugh it away. I walked in, bought a copy with cash, and tucked it into my coat, my name on the cover, my words on every page, and not a single one of them inside. They thought I'd always be there. They thought I owed them, but now they know I was the one holding everything together, and I let go. There's this moment after the first punch lands, right after the shock wears off, when your brain convinces you it must be a mistake. That was my family. After the payments stopped, after the legal notices went out, after they realized they couldn't guilt or charm their way back in, there was a pause. I almost let myself believe it was over. I should have known better. Because people like them don't back down when you take something from them. They only double down when you take something they believe they were entitled to. The first sign came quietly. A journalist I'd worked with messaged me, said someone had reached out to her claiming to be a family friend, offering concerning personal information about me. She didn't entertain it, just forwarded the email. It was written in that vague, self-righteous tone only bitter relatives seem to perfect. There's a lot readers don't know about her. She hasn't always been stable. We're just worried. That was rich. Then someone from the publisher's marketing team forwarded me screenshots. Anonymous Twitter accounts, same tone, same language. One of them posted a cropped photo from my teenage years captioned with, "This is the real her." Don't be fooled. The picture was harmless, just me, younger, sitting in my room with books stacked around me. But I knew what they were trying to do. They were trying to smear me using my own past, weaponizing the image of the quiet, sensitive girl they'd spent years mocking behind closed doors. Now they were dragging her out into the open, trying to convince the world she was unstable, delusional, dangerous even, because if they couldn't get their money, they tried to take my name. I called my lawyer again. This time it wasn't about cease and desist. It was about consequences. We gathered everything: emails, texts, social media posts, voice recordings, and a few key witnesses, industry contacts who'd received unsolicited messages. I gave sworn statements. My lawyer prepared a defamation and harassment suit. Formal, loud, because apparently quiet boundaries didn't work. My sister showed up at my door again before the papers could even be delivered. She was crying this time. Not crocodile tears, real ones. Snot, shaking hands, the whole show. "I didn't know," she said. "I didn't know they were going this far." I stood in the doorway and listened. She told me things, blamed others, said she was scared, said she missed me, said she couldn't believe how far things had spiraled. I looked her in the eye and said, "You laughed the loudest." She froze. I didn't raise my voice, didn't cry. I just closed the door. The lawsuit was filed 3 days later. It didn't make headlines, but it didn't have to. My publisher knew, my team knew, the literary community knew. And behind the scenes, the family started panicking. Lawyers reached out. Letters were exchanged. There were attempts to settle. I declined. I didn't want their money. I just wanted the silence, and I got it. They withdrew the post, deleted the emails, sent official apologies that read like they'd been carved from stone under duress. But more than that, they disappeared from my inbox, from my voicemail, from my life. For the first time, I couldn't hear their voices. No laughter, no guilt trips, no accusations, nothing. And it was still not peaceful exactly, but still like the air after a long storm. Messy, damp, but clean. People always ask if I ever responded to the final apology, if I sent anything back. I didn't. I don't need closure from people who see apologies as just another tool of manipulation. I didn't need them to understand. I just needed them to stop, and they did. The second book launched last month. It sold out on pre-order. It wasn't about them, not exactly, but there were pieces of me they'd never seen before. Not the girl with the notebooks, not the performer, not the bank account. Just me. The girl who once wrote, "I think if I disappeared, they wouldn't notice until dinner." The girl who finally realized they never deserved a seat at her table in the first place. I still have the diary, the real one, the one they read from like it was a joke. It's in a fireproof box now next to the contract for my second book. Sometimes I take it out and flip to the entry they mocked the most. The one about the crush, the one about being invisible, the one they thought was hilarious. I read it now and don't feel shame. I feel clarity because that diary wasn't embarrassing. It was proof. Proof that I saw them for who they were long before I was ready to act on it. They tried to humiliate me using my own words. They thought it would break me, but I used theirs instead. In court, on paper, and I never paid for their silence. They paid for mine. It's been over a year now. My parents lost the house. Turns out refinancing only gets you so far when no one has a real income. They moved into a much smaller place, barely a step above a rental, though they still pretend it's temporary. My sister got a job at a call center. She hates it. She posts passive-aggressive quotes on Facebook now. Stuff about how families should stick together and money can't buy loyalty. Her kids are doing okay, thankfully. I send birthday gifts quietly without a return address. My brother dropped out of university 2 semesters later. Apparently, when someone else isn't paying for your tuition, it's a little harder to stay motivated. I haven't seen any of them since the lawsuit. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far, if cutting them off completely was cold, if letting it all collapse was cruel. But then I remember how easily they laughed, how easily they chose to humiliate me when I had only ever given, only ever hoped they might be proud. So, I don't know. What do you think? Did I go too far? Let me know in the comments. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. If you like stories like this where justice doesn't always look polite, make sure you subscribe for